Right, so what we were discussing was the TestNg framework, and I just told you what's the importance of using the TestNg framework. TestNg framework is something which helps you to coordinate, fine, which helps you to coordinate between everything. These are your Selenium tests over here, okay, and in between, like this is your Excel file in which you'll keep the data. This is the file in which you'll do the logging. These are the reports which you will generate. So when Selenium scripts execute, it's not just the script which you want to execute. You need to do a lot of other things as well, fine. So in between we keep a framework like TestNg, JUnit, Cucumber, JBehave or Fitness, and I was telling you about installing TestNg. Okay, now to install TestNg, I just told you that you need to go to testng.org website. Okay, this is testng.org website. You go over here, and in the download section, you go out here in the download section of the website, right? Now I think everybody is having Eclipse 3.4 and above. If you have Eclipse 3.4 and above, you copy this URL and install TestNg. The first thing is that you need to install TestNg. Copy the URL, go into help, install new software, and paste the URL over here, and then hit the enter button of the keyboard. As soon as you hit the enter button, you will see TestNg option over here. Click it, keep on clicking next, next, next. In the end, Eclipse will restart and TestNg will be installed. If you want to check if TestNg is installed or not, you can go to Window, Show View, Other, and under Java you will see the TestNg option. If it's there, that means TestNg has been installed. Now TestNg is something which can help you write the Selenium test cases and all that stuff. Okay, now I've just created this basic project TestNg basics. Inside the source folder, I'll create a new class, right? I'll create a class called as sample test. Okay, and rather, hold on, I'll just delete it, and rather I'll create it in a package. Right, what is a package? A package is a folder inside the source folder. Okay, I'll create a new class known as sample test, and I'll create it in the package, say test cases. Fine. So this sample test will be created in the package test cases. Test package is like a folder inside a folder. Inside the source folder you have the test cases folder, and then you have the sample test. Okay, the package name is mentioned on the top of the file. Right, now there is no main function in a TestNg. In TestNg we don't have main function like earlier we used to write the main functions, right, to do various examples and all. But in TestNg there is no main function. You have got annotations in TestNg. For example, you can write over here @test public void do login. So this function becomes a test case. If I write @test on the top of it, @test technically is known as an annotation. Fine, it's an annotation which denotes that this function will become a test case. If I move the mouse over this annotation, you will get the option add TestNg library. Okay, when you click on this add TestNg library, this library over here TestNg gets added into the project. If you expand this library, then practically inside it there's nothing but something known as testng.jar. This comes into your Eclipse when you actually install TestNg. Okay, now you can move your mouse again and select the option import test org.testng.annotation. Don't do anything related to JUnit. Find everything out here is related to TestNg. Alright, so no, it's not about Mozilla or it's not about Firefox. TestNg is there inside Eclipse. It's an add-on in Eclipse. It's got nothing to do with Mozilla or IE or Firefox. You just need to get this URL, copy the URL and go into help, install new software and install inside Eclipse. It's got nothing to do with browser. Okay, TestNg as a framework is not just used for Selenium, it is used for many other unit tests unit test cases as well. It's just that it's existing, so we use it with Selenium as well. So it's not something which has been specifically made for Selenium. TestNg or JUnit, they are unit testing frameworks. Okay, they were existing before Selenium as well. Only thing is the Selenium code we can integrate in them. Okay, so I hope I am making my point very clear, right? So this is the test function. This denotes a test case. If you want to execute it, you can click on the file, right click and select the option run as TestNg test. So when you run this test case as TestNg test, what happens is that, hold on. So this test case runs, and in the console you'll get the option that there were total 1 test cases which were executed, failures were 0 and skips were 0. Okay, this is a kind of automatic short form of report which it presents. Along with that, you'll see the option results of running the class sample test. Okay, this is presented by TestNg. If you click on this, you'll see that do login is in green. That means it is passing. Fine. Along with that, if I just refresh my project, hold on, you will see the test output folder over here, and inside the test output folder you will have the HTML reports generated automatically. Now this kind of thing is not there in JUnit. If you use JUnit, then automatic HTML reports and all are not generated. In this HTML report, if you open index.html, it will look something like this. That is, hold on, this is how index.html will look like. That is, there was one test case do login executed and it is passing. Fine. Now these reports are not so good. Okay, later in the course I'll tell you how to generate TestNg XSLT reports, which are far better than normal TestNg reports. TestNg XSLT reports, it looks something like this. Okay, so I'll tell you later on that how it is generated. It's a pie chart basically. Fine. Now moving further. Okay, so what we saw, we made a simple test. We never did anything inside it. Inside it, basically, we write our Selenium code. Okay, and when I executed this test, it is passing. Right? If I don't write @test on it, then this will not be executed as a test case. You have to write @test to make it execute like a test case. Fine. Now inside it, I can print. Suppose I'll print logging in. Fine. Now similarly, suppose there is another function, test function known as public void logout. Okay, inside it I write system.out.println logging out. Okay, so this is one test case which is login, this is another test case which is logout, and suppose there is another test case public, hold on, public void password change. Right. As a normal user, what I'll do is I'll try to put it over here, thinking that the test cases will run in a serial order from top to bottom. Right, that is the test case which I have written in the first go will execute first, and the test case which is written after that will execute after that. When you run this, when you run it as a TestNg test, if you see the console, then in console obviously there are 3 test cases which are executing. Fine, but the order is not same. The order in which they are executed is not the expected order. First it is printing logging in, then logging out, and then password change. So you know what, it is not the order in which the test cases are written. Okay, they don't execute in the same order. Okay, you can't expect the order to be same. You have to make the order same. You can make the order by prioritizing the test cases. The first priority is that login test should execute. The second is that password test, change test, and the third is that logout test case should execute. Fine. So what we do is that we give priorities over here. In the bracket over here, you can write priority equals to 1, priority equals to 2, and priority equals to 3. Okay, fine. Now when you run this, you see that the order is do login, password change, and logout. Okay, so you have to decide the priority of the test cases depending on the needs of your project. Okay, now priority is not just enough. What if the login test fails? You are not able to log in. Then there is no way, no means of executing password change and logout test. You getting my point? When you were not able to successfully log in the application, then why would you change the password and why would you why would you log out of the application? So how will you handle this kind of scenario? Okay, so look, to manage this kind of scenario, the first thing which you need to learn about is assertion. How will you fail a test case? Okay, we fail a test case with the help of assertions, right? Assertions, they help us to manage expected and actual values, right? I'll make a new class over here and I'll call it the name as validations. Alright, and suppose in this I keep a test method at the rate test public void validate stuff, any test. Right, now as usual, you have got two values in a test case. Always there is some actual value and expected value, right? So if you want to check whether the actual value and the expected value is do match or not, right? And you need to actually report it in the reports as well that they match or they don't match. Then you can use assertions, right? Assertions, they help us to validate stuff. For example, I'll write over here assert dot assert equals. Fine. Make sure that the assert class you import is from org.testng.assert, not junit. Okay, and then you give the actual value. See, I give the actual value a and expected value as also a. Both of them match, and when you run this as a TestNg test, it says that total test runs were 1, failures were 0, skips were 0. But instead of expected a, I give a1. Fine. And when you run this, you'll see that in the output you will have a failure. Fine, so you keep the expected as well as actual values out here, right? And yeah, tell me. First one is the actual value and the second one is the expected. Actual. Yes. Yes. Yeah, that's what we do in testing, right? We match the values. Okay. I kept both the values as different. Right? I kept both the values as different. A and A1, they don't match, right? I am writing assert equals. Assert equals means that make sure that both the values are equal. Fine. Yeah, that's what. It depends on the condition which we are using. Okay. I am writing over here assert equals. Right? Suppose if I would have written assert dot assert not equal. Okay, then it will pass if both the values are not equal. Alright. You got my point? Hello? Yeah. So I'm writing assert equals over there. Fine. So this is how like assertions work. Okay. Now there is another assert function called as assert dot assert true. Fine. You can give any condition, say 4 greater than 3, and a message, any message. If the condition evaluates to true, that means 4 greater than is 3 is true, right? Okay. So this will pass. But if it evaluates to false, right, it will fail. You got my point? When this kind of condition will actually come up, right? This kind of condition will, sorry, when this kind of assertion will be used. This kind of assertion will be used in case, say you want to check the presence of the element on the page. You can write a condition over here which can actually check the element presence on the page, and if it's evaluating to false, it will actually throw this error message. I hope I'm keeping myself very clear, right? Right? Yeah. Yeah. So remember, I created a function known as isElementPresent in the earlier classes. So you can give over here, you can pass over the element. If the function returns you false, then you get this error. Right? And I think day 4 or day 5 or day 6 I created this function. Fine. Okay. Now coming back to the test, right? Um, I had got three functions. Okay, I had got three test functions over here with three different priorities. Okay, now suppose something fails in login test. I write over here assert dot assert equals, and I give the actual and some hypothetical expected value, and I don't make them match each other. Fine. So when you run this, it actually fails the do login but passes password change and logout. Right? Is it correct? Is this the thing which should happen? Right? It should not happen like this, right? So what is the actual thing which should happen? The actual thing is that both the tests should be skipped. They should not execute. Neither pass nor fail, but they should be skipped. Right? So what we do is over here we use depends on. Okay, you use something like this, that is the password change is depends on the methods. You actually give an array over here, do login. Okay, and similarly you write it over here, depends on methods, logout is dependent on login as well. So if login test is failing, if I run this, hold on just a minute, my PC has hanged, just a minute. Sorry. Okay, fine, it's okay now. Yeah, if I run it as a TestNg test, so if you look at the results, then login test fails. This is the assertion error. But password and logout, they are actually skipping. So if they skip, that means that's what actually we wanted, right? So you have got various customizations in TestNg like this, right? So you can easily work with it like this. Okay, this kind of thing is not there in JUnit. Okay, JUnit is the rival framework for TestNg. TestNg is new and it's got a lot of customizations like this. Okay, Okay, so I hope everybody got the point here. The question was that what is the difference between basically these two, how they are interrelated. Look, they are not related to each other, priority and depends on method. The priority will decide the sequence in which the test cases will execute, but depends on method executes, implements the dependency. Okay, both these tests are dependent on the login test. In case the login test fails, then these two methods will not be executed. Okay, if you put your cursor in front of this round bracket, fine, and hit control space bar, you will get lot of other, you can say, features of TestNg. Fine, so just a minute, it's again hanged. Yeah, it's okay now. So you know what, if you want to read about these features, you can also go to this TestNg documentation. Look, this is the very good documentation. Okay, I also learned TestNg from here, right? And it also talks about running the test cases parallelly. Now this is the one of the major reasons I'm teaching you TestNg, is because TestNg can actually help you um, run the test cases parallelly, and it's quite easy than JUnit. Okay, and moreover, grid which runs the test cases parallelly uses TestNg a lot than JUnit. All the grid documentation comes along with TestNg. All right, so now we have to resume. Yeah, so fine, I guess I made my point clear over here. Right, you have got priorities and you have got dependencies. Right, similarly there are functions. There is a function like, for example, the most commonly used, before test. This is another annotation. I will call it as function as pre. This annotation is called before executing all the tests. It doesn't matter if I keep it over here or if I keep it over here. It really doesn't matter. The annotation matters. If I write over here system out dot println before executing, and if I run this sample test, then in the output you will see that it prints um, just a minute. Yeah, it prints before executing in the very beginning, right? So before test is executed before executing any test. You can do anything inside it. Probably if you have to open the browser, you can open it. If you have to connect to database, you can connect it. It's purely upon your test requirements. Fine. And similarly, we have a function known as at the rate after test, like public void post. Fine. And I'll write over here system.out.println after executing. Fine. So this is executed in the end after all the tests are executed. Probably what you can do, you can close the browser, you can close the database connection, or you can do stuff which you want to do after your all the test cases are executed. Fine. So when you run this, you see that even if there is a failure, pass, skipped, whatever it is, before executing and after executing are executed. That means before test and after test are executed, no matter whether the tests fail, whether the tests pass, whether the tests they skip. Okay, fine, right? Now at times you have a requirement. At times you have a requirement that you deliberately want to skip a test case. Like I have written assert over here, right? To fail a test case. Assert is to pass or fail a test case. But there are requirements at times wherein you need to deliberately skip a test case. If you want to deliberately skip a test case, you can write over here throw new skip exception, and you can give some error, something like that, skipping the test. Fine. This line will skip the test case, will not execute the test. So when you run this, see that it skips the login test. Since login test is skipped, password and logout also get skipped because they are dependent on that test. Okay. If I cut the skip line and put it inside the before test, okay, if I put this inside before test, then also all the three tests will be skipped, right? Oh, they are not even executed. You see that in the reports only pre and post are coming. The tests are not even coming. They are completely removed from the picture. Okay, because in the before test only I have thrown the skip exception. That means get out of the test case. Okay, right, fine. Now at times, like, this is quite simple stuff, right? You can have a look at the video as well, right? At times you have a requirement that you want to execute one test case multiple times. For example, you have a test, you have a class, I'll name that class as registration test. Fine. In this class I have a test function, public void do register. Fine. Now in this test, what I need to do is that I need to run this test multiple times with different sets of data. What can be the data in the registration? You can have your name, email, phone. Fine. Suppose these three fields are required for registration test. Okay. And you want to register multiple users with different sets of name, email, and phone numbers. Right. So how do you do that? We do that in TestNg with the help of an annotation known as @data provider. Okay. What is data provider? It is an annotation in TestNg. It's associated with a function which returns your two-dimensional object array. What this function does, it will return you, hold on, this function will return you a two-dimensional object array like this. Okay, this is the data provider. Fine. Okay, there will be number of rows in this two-dimensional object array, and there will be number of columns. Fine. Number of rows will be equal to number of times you want to run the test, and number of columns would be equal to number of parameters in your test. For example, name, email, phone, and all, everything. So you have got indexes, like this is the 0th row, first row, second row, third row, then 0th column, first column, second column, third column, and we keep the data over here. For example, this is first row, second column, right? Data for one test execution will be kept in one row. Alright, so what we'll do is over here is that we'll make a two-dimensional object array like this. Object data equals to new object. Fine. You specify the number of rows here, for example 2 rows and 3 columns. Rows are equal to 2, that means I need to run the whole test, this test 2 times. And number of columns are 3 because we have got 3 parameters over here. So you have the rows first and the columns after that defined in this two-dimensional object array. And you write it like this: data 0 0 equals to, I can put any name, Henry, right? This is the first row, 0th row, 0th column, 0th row first, 0th row second. Email is say henry@gmail.com, and you can put any phone number. Fine. Okay. Similarly, you can put the data for another user. Say Sam. Email is sam@gmail.com and some other phone number. But this would be the first row. So I have made a two-dimensional object array over here, which looks something like this: three columns and two rows. So you have the data, two sets of data over here. And now what you want is that you want that this data should actually be passed over into this test, and this test should be executed two times, right? So that can be done very easily. You can write over here return data, and you can link this test case with this data provider. You can write over here that the data provider for this test case is get data. Okay, get data is the data provider for this test case. And one of the important things is that the number of input parameters into this test should be equal to number of columns. That means number of parameters you have in the test. So you have to write over here string name, string email, string phone. Fine. That's it. Nothing else to be done. Now TestNg will go inside this test. It will read this annotation @test. It will come to know that this is a test case. Okay. Secondly, it will read that the data provider for this test is get data. So it will go inside this function first, collect the data inside the two-dimensional object array. Since this object array has got two rows, TestNg will come to know that fine, I have to run this test two times. And since it has got three columns, TestNg will validate whether the function has got three input parameters or not. And if it is there, if everything matches, if everything falls into the place, and if I run my registration test as a TestNg test, in the results you will see that it's executed two times with two sets of data. In the console as well, you'll see that total test runs are two. So this test function will be called two times. Once with this set of data, other time with this set of data. Did you understand this point? How you do the configuration? It's all about configuration, nothing else. Okay, you need to have the data provider, you need to have the test, you need to link the test to data provider, you should know number of rows and columns in the data, and then you have to pass over number of parameters as same as number of columns. Right. Now there are various flaws in this. Practically when you read the data, you don't read it like this. We'll read the data from an Excel file, firstly. Secondly, there can be web pages where there are not just three fields. Probably you have got 50 fields which you have to fill up. Then will you keep 50 input parameters in this function? You cannot just, you can keep, that's not a problem, but maintenance of such a function in which you have got 50 input parameters will be very tough. You can practically we keep it like this as well. It's easy to read. Fine. Okay, so it becomes very tough. If these parameters are 50, then I have to give 50 columns, and maintaining 50 values is very difficult. So I'll talk about that. How do you manage it? Fine, but I'm telling you practical problems. So firstly, you don't keep the data like this. You will keep it in the Excel file and read it from the Excel file. Alright. Secondly, you have these set of parameters which can go large. because when you use practical applications, the enterprise applications, they are huge. Okay, so we'll see the solution for this. So what we saw was that we saw a simple test and we created multiple tests inside it. We gave them priorities, we gave them dependencies. Okay, priority and dependency is different. We saw before test and after test functions, right? I talked about assertions as well, and in the end I talked about parameterizing a test case with the help of TestNg. Okay, right? Now if you have to run the test cases in batch, you have to run both all these three tests, three Java files in batch. Then you actually use testng.xml. Fine. There's a file known as testng.xml. Look, I'll not talk about it because that's a standard thing. You can have a look at this module again. You can go to the website qtpselenium.com and you can have a look at Selenium tutorial over here and look at this module number 9, which I have out here. It's got more information than what I have taught you, right? In that I have also taught about ant and all and how to run the ant tests and ant, what is an ant and how to use assertions and all in little detail, right? But I have also talked about a file known as testng.xml, which can help you to run all these three Java files in a kind of batch process. That is, it can help you to run these three Java files together in one go. Right, that's a standard procedure, but out here I want to talk about little practical stuff now. Okay, now coming over to Excel files, that how will you read this data from the Excel file? Okay, suppose I make some function, I do something, and I am able to read this data from the Excel file, right? So, will you read it for each and every test? Suppose you have got 1000 test cases. Will you keep the code for reading the data from the Excel file in this data provider? I'm not going inside that code to read the data from the Excel file, but I'm just assuming, suppose you have the knack and you have the code with you which reads the data from the Excel file. Okay. Now suppose you have got 1000 test cases. For each and every test case you have a data provider. Fine. And will inside each and every data provider will you keep the code to read the data from the Excel file? The answer is no. We make utility functions. Okay, we don't repeat the code again and again. No, we don't do that. We will make utility functions in this kind of project now. Okay, but first let me talk about Excel files. Look, to read Excel files and to manage Excel files, there are two types of APIs. One is JXL and one is POI. Some people use JXL. I'll just go to Google and type over here JXL. So this is the JXL API, fine, which you can use. Or alright. Or there is another one known as Apache POI, which is better and more rich. Apache POI API is not just for Excel. It can be used to manage any kind of Excel document, whether it is uh, I'm sorry, whether it is an Excel document or a PowerPoint representation or a Word document. You can use the Apache POI API to manage all the kind of Microsoft documents. Alright, so I prefer this one, and that's what I'm going to take in the training, right?